Welcome everyone. Welcome to iShastra. I hope everyone is doing their preparations properly for your prelims, and I hope everyone is practicing at least 10 to 15 passages for the reading comprehension segment in the CSAT paper. So I hope the last video was helpful for you. If not, you can just see the recording again, and if you face any issues, you can comment and let us know. We are there to guide you at any point of time at iShastra, and also at our iShastra channel, and also at our institute, which is located in Kolkata, at Bhawanipur, and also we have a Telegram channel that is iShastra. In the name of iShastra, you can join that channel and get your required help. So let's get back to our practice session, shall we? So welcome back again. We will just go forward with our warm-up sessions, and then we will just practice with efforts and seriousness and start doing our performance. So start practicing so much that our performance enhances day by day, and then we reach a point where there will be no chances of any mistake. Okay, so just follow with me and let's move forward to our passages. Okay, so this passage is taken from the paper 2021. So in my last video, if you have seen, the last video was also done on paper 2021, and I had done a video on 6 passages which were also taken from the paper 2021. Now I've made a second part of the video where I have taken some more passages so that I can help you solve some more critical passages from the same paper. So just take a minute, read the passage, and then we will start solving the passage together. Okay, let's start reading. In part 3 of the Constitution, which assures people certain fundamental rights, Article 25 proclaims that all persons are equally entitled to freedom of conscience and the right to freely profess, practice, and propagate religion. So we all know that we have certain fundamental rights. We have certain fundamental rights like right to expression, right to religion, freedom of expression, freedom of religion. We have all these fundamental rights and freedoms, right? So we can follow any religion, we can profess, we can follow the ceremonies of any religion, we can follow any religious infrastructure as per our own choice, because we have been given such fundamental rights under the Article 25. So what people fail to notice is that this proclamation is prefixed with words subject to public order, morality, health, and to other provisions of this part. So what is being said is that these rights are given to us. Of course, we have our necessary fundamental rights given to us. But what we forget is that these rights are not absolute rights. These rights have some restrictions with regard to order, morality, and nature. The closing words of this prefatory rider in Article 25 virtually constitute a subordination clause, placing other fundamental rights mentioned in Part 3 over and above the right to religious freedom. Among those other fundamental rights is the right to equality before law and right and equal protection of laws assured at the outset, elaborated in later articles to mean, inter alia, that the state shall not deny equal protection of laws to any person or group of persons on the basis of religion alone. So no kind of equal protection will be denied by the state. Nothing will be denied. What the basic thing that the author is trying to say in this passage is that under Article 25, all the citizens of India have been granted freedom of religion or right to access, profess or propagate any religion of our own choice. But although we have our own fundamental rights, these rights are not completely absolute. That is, restriction free होकर हम लोग ये right नहीं यूज कर सकते. There are some restrictions, कुछ पाबंदी लगाया है स्टेट ने इन राइट्स के ऊपर, so that they are not misused. What are these restrictions? These restrictions are placed in terms of its order, morality, and nature. So these restrictions, we have been given rights, we have been given freedoms, but they are also kept under controlled conditions, or some restrictions are placed on them according to which we can actually exercise these rights and freedoms. Okay, so now let's move on to the question. What is the most logical inference from the above passage? So what is the most logical understanding that we're getting from the passage? So as we have said that what the author is saying is that according to Article 25, we have our rights, but these fundamental rights, these freedoms are not absolute or restriction free. They have been given under controlled conditions. So you can use them up to a certain limit or up to a certain restriction. They are not absolute. This is the basic or logical understanding that we are getting after reading the passage. So let's see which point matches to this understanding. Okay? Let's see. First point. State shall not interfere with the religious affairs of the citizens. State shall not interfere with the religious affairs of the citizens. Now, this is not the right point. This is not the right point, right? Because this point is going against what is being said. What is being said in the passage? That the state is interfering and the state is putting restrictions on these fundamental rights. The state has placed some restrictions on these fundamental rights. So, when the state is placing some restrictions on the fundamental rights, so on the fundamental rights including right to religion, right to expression, all the rights, when the state is putting some restrictions, it means that it is interfering. So when such a situation is happening, this point cannot go with that point where it is said that state shall not interfere with the religious affairs of the citizen. No, this point is completely incorrect, because this situation can never happen, that the people are following some religious things or they are doing certain things according to their religion, and they're choosing something, but the state is not interfering. No, that cannot happen. You have your rights, but the state has also placed some restrictions which you need to obey. So this point is completely wrong, that the state shall not interfere with the religious affairs of the citizen. So this point is wrong. Let's go to the second point. Religious freedom under the Constitution is open to state intervention. Now this point is right, because we have said the same thing. All the rights are open to, including the religious freedom, is open to the state's intervention, because the state is putting restrictions which needs to be obeyed while exercising these freedoms and rights. So this point is correct. We will take it. Now, the third point, religious freedom of the citizens is not covered under fundamental rights. This is completely wrong. Right to freedom of religion is one of the major fundamental rights. So, a point which shows this kind of information, it is completely invalid. So, we will not take this point, obviously. Let's cancel it. Last point, religious practices of any community are immune to state laws. Now, religious practices of any community are immune to state laws. Nothing of this sort is mentioned in the passage, that any practice of a community are immune to state laws. Any information of this sort is not mentioned in the passage, so we will not take such a point. So let's cancel it. So after doing this passage, I just want to give a brief kind of a brief revision of the rules that we had done in our previous class or video regarding the rules that we follow while solving the CSAT paper? What is the first rule? That we look for keywords. Second is we do not use or select points that have extreme words. Third, we will not choose options which will have examples. Fourth, we will not choose points which are not relevant or which are opposite or which are negating the opinion of the author. So, if we follow, अगर हम लोग ये rules follow करते हैं ना, तो CSAT paper is like just a smooth flow. Nothing, a very easy thing to solve. Okay? And also very important rule, I hope everyone remembers, 10 to 15 passages every day we have to practice. And any guidance, Aisha Asra is there to help you. Okay? Okay, now let's move on with our next passage. If you have any doubts regarding this passage, please just look into the passage one more time, read it, reread it. If you have any problem, tell me. I will explain it again. If not, let's move to the next passage. Okay. Now we have come to passage 8. Read this passage, I'm giving you a minute. Read it, try to solve it, or try to just have an idea of what the answer might be or what the author is trying to tell us, and then we'll solve it together. Take a minute. Okay, let's read the passage together. Many opportunities to harness the highly skewed seasonal and spatial distribution of monsoon flows, which occur in a 4 months period from June to September, have been lost. So what is being said? That usually the 4 months of a monsoon season are from June to September, and during that time some places receive more rainfall and some places receive less rainfall. Okay? Since these few months account for most of the rainfall and consequent freshwater availability, the need for holding rainwater in reservoirs for subsequently releasing it for use over the year is a necessity nobody can afford to overlook. Now, as the situation has become so that only monsoon comes for only 4 months in a year, from June to September, where only some places are receiving rainfall while the others are not, that is why a necessity is arising where we need to store rainwater in a reservoir so that this water can be used as fresh water for the rest of the year. In places where there's a scarcity of water. Okay? Now, climate change continues to affect the weather conditions, which also in turn leads to the excess and shortages of water. Okay? While millions suffer from droughts and floods, water in the country's main rivers flow unutilized and are discharged into the sea every year. Now you see how much water is being wasted every year. While on one hand, the author is telling us that we have 4 months of rainfall or monsoon season from June to September, and during that time, some places have more rainfall while the others don't. Due to that, there is a scarcity of water, and for that reason, it becomes a necessity to reserve water in reservoirs so that we can use that water as fresh water for the rest of the year, and can be used especially in areas where there is a scarcity. Now, this is one side of the story. The other side of the story is that all of this is also happening along with what is happening, the climate change. Now, these climate changes are also causing the excess and shortages of water. Now, as a result of this climate change, these droughts and floods are also happening. Now, while these are happening, on the other side, sometimes unutilized water is being drained into the sea. Unutilized water is being drained into the sea every year because why? Because it cannot be used in a proper way. So you can see that sometimes some amount, at least a huge amount of water is getting wasted every year. Okay, so what the author is saying is that we have 4 months of monsoon season: June, July, August, September. During these 4 months, some places get more water or more rainfall compared to the others. As a result of this, a necessity to reserve the water in the reservoirs becomes essential, so that this water can be used for the rest of the year by the places, especially where there is a scarcity of water. Now, this is one part. The other part is that कुछ जगह पे the climate change is causing a shortage, or sometimes climate change is causing an excess of water. Like in a climate change की वजह से कुछ जगह पे droughts हो रहे हैं, climate change की वजह से कुछ जगह पे floods हो जा रहे हैं. तो what is that ending in? That is ending in the suffering of millions of people. And that is also causing a loss of life as well as a loss of water. Now, another thing is also happening is that sometimes a lot of unutilized water is getting drained into the sea every year. So you can see that in the overall scenario, the author is trying to imply to us, or the author is trying to give us the indication that proper distribution of water is not happening in the country, as a result of which many places are not getting equal amount of water, and supply of water is also not happening properly, due to which wastage is also happening, shortage is also happening, and many sufferings are also taking place. So now we will come to the question which we need to see what the author is asking of us. Let's see. With reference to the above passage, which of the following could be the most rational and practical implication? So yes, so we need to find from this passage which is the most rational and practical implication that the author has indicated towards us. Because we have already understood, just now I have already told you, that the author is indicating that the one basic thing which is lacking in the system is a proper distribution channel of water. Supply ठीक से नहीं हो रहा है water का. इसलिए what is happening that some places are not receiving equal amount of water, some places are having suffering from shortage, due to which sufferings are happening, wastage of water is also happening. So proper supply and distribution of water is mandatory to reduce or resolve this problem. So we need to find a point from the options which actually match this opinion of us. Okay? Let's look at the points. First, interlinking of rivers should be undertaken. Now, this is actually currently happening in India in many places. So, and this is actually helpful in resolving such a problem. So, this thing can be taken as an answer. Let's take it. Let's go to the next point. A network of dams and canals should be built across the country for proper distribution of water. Now, this is also a very nice point. We are actually looking for something which can help in the supply and distribution of water to resolve this problem, right? So here they are saying that a network of dams and canals should be built across the country for proper distribution of water. मतलब dams and canals ठीक तरह से एक प्रॉपर चैनल और प्रॉपर सिस्टम ऑफ डैम्स एंड कैनल्स बिल्ड होना चाहिए कंट्री में, सो दैट डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ वाटर कैन बी डन इन अ प्रॉपर एंड अप्रोप्रिएट मैनर. So this is what is required in the passage. That is what the author is saying, that is what is required. That is the only thing that is lacking in the passage. That is the only thing that is lacking in the whole scenario. which is causing all of this. So this is what is required. That is what I was telling you, right? That a proper distribution channel, a proper supply of water or distribution is required. So we are supposed to find a point that is going to match with this opinion, and we have found it. That a network of dams and canals will actually create a proper distribution of water, which is actually lacking in the scenario. That is what we are looking for it, right? So this point is actually going with it. Because what the author is trying to imply to us, the basic thing we need is a distribution channel. Proper distribution of water. Free flowing or proper distribution of water, proper supply of water, so that these problems can be all resolved. And this point, so this thing we have understood by reading the passage, and this point is actually matching with the option here, that a network of dams and canals should be built across the country for proper distribution of water. So this is one of the very rational and practical implication that we can take from the passage, because this can be actually done for solving the problem. So this is a very right answer. Let's take it. Next point. Farmers should be provided easy loans for digging bore wells. Now this is done for groundwater. Sorry. This is actually done for bringing up or digging up groundwater. And this has nothing to do with distribution of water or fresh water. Nothing to do with that. So this point, we'll just cancel it. Next, usage of water for agriculture should be regulated by law. Now this thing I have already mentioned in my previous video. Any point which has words like law or policy or regulation, we will not take such points. Any points which deal with law, policy, regulation, we will not take such points, because we are no one to make such laws, and it is better if we just avoid such points. Okay? Let's cancel it. Next, distribution of river water among regions should be regulated by union government. Now these things are very tricky points. Okay? These are kind of scope traps. Okay? These are actually scope traps. Why? Because in points where it will mention that local government should be doing this, union government should do this, state government should do that, please avoid such points. Because why should, firstly, it is not mentioned in the passage that the union government only can solve this problem. It is not mentioned. We can ask simply the question that खुद को पूछना चाहिए कि अपने gut feeling पे मत जाओ, खुद को question करो ना, that why can't this problem be solved by the state government or the local government? Why the union government? Why the union government? And so why the union government? Because in the passage, nowhere it is mentioned about the union government. So we cannot just randomly go by our guts saying that yes, when it is said maybe the union government can solve the problem. No. These are scope traps. When these points will be containing such words like union government can do this, state government can do that, local government should be doing such things. No, these are scope traps which we should be avoiding and which we should be not taking into consideration, because nothing of such points are mentioned in the passage, and we should be asking ourselves that why the union government should be doing such? Why not the state government? We should be questioning ourselves that why it is mentioned such a thing? Why can't the other option be applied? So we should not be concentrating on our guts, rather we should be questioning the other options to see whether this option is a correct one or not. Okay? So anything of such sort, just don't go for it, because firstly because it's not mentioned in the passage, and secondly because these are all kind of scope traps, because these are not mentioned, and also because we should be just going against it and asking question that why this, why not something else. So it's in a simple way I would just say to you that don't go for such things, because the first point is that it is not mentioned in the passage. So whatever is not mentioned in the passage, as per rules, we will not go for it. So let's cancel this point. So our correct answer is number 1 and 2. So we will select our correct code, which is 1 and 2. Okay, so I hope this passage was very easy for you to solve. Let's go forward with the next passage. Read this passage, take a minute and read this passage, and then we will go forward with solving it even further. Okay, let's read the passage. People will invest in education whenever they are granted economic freedom to fully enjoy its benefits. Again, this is for obvious reason that return education increases, the level of economic freedom rises. When people, thanks to lower tax rates, are allowed to retain most of the higher income that they gain from each incremental level of education, it makes very eminent sense to invest in education. So what happens that people will invest in education. People tend to invest in education more when they tend to gain more of economic freedom, okay? Or more when they tend to enjoy more of its benefits. So what is being said is that when the tax rates are going down, economic freedom is increasing, they're investing in education. When tax rates are increasing, economic freedom is going down, so people are not being able to invest in education. So let's make a flowchart, simple flowchart. Lower tax rates, increase in economic freedom, which leads to rise in education. Sorry. Okay, so my tax rates are decreasing, my economic freedom is increasing, and as a result of this too, my education is increasing, my investment in education is increasing, okay? Investment in education is increasing. So this flow chart is very easy for you to understand. I'll make another one which will be more easy for you to understand. Okay. Okay. We will make another flow chart together, okay? I'll make it for you and you can read and you can see and understand what is happening actually. Now tax rate, lower tax rates, okay? Lower tax rates, economic freedom, investment in education. Okay? So this is a simple flowchart. So what is being said, what is the author saying, that the lower the tax rates, the more economic freedom because people are being able to retain their income, so they are getting more economic freedom. As a result of this, they are being able to invest more in education. So let's read the passage again. People invest in education when they are granted the economic freedom to fully enjoy its benefits. Again, for the obvious reason, return in education increases, level of economic freedom rises. When people, thanks to lower tax rates, are allowed to retain most of the higher income that they gain from each incremental level of education, it makes very eminent sense to invest in education. On the other hand, when the government decides to tax higher income of educated individuals at even higher rates, it makes very little sense to invest in education, educating oneself further. The same incentives apply to parents where who decide to whether invest in children's education. So when the government decides to increase the tax rates on the higher income of the individuals, then the individuals feel demotivated to educate themselves further. They don't feel any need, or they don't feel any more encouraged to educate themselves any further. Okay? So this is a simple thing. See, now when the tax rates are increasing, higher tax rates leads to fall in economic freedom, which leads to fall in investment in education. Okay? So high rates, high interest rates, or high rates, not high interest rates, sorry, high tax rates lead to fall in economic freedom, which leads to fall in investment. This is the basic thing. Now, after reading this flow chart, let's read the question. What is being asked? With reference to the above passage, we need to find the assumptions which have been made. So, after reading the flow chart, let's read the passage again. People will invest in education whenever they are granted the economic freedom to fully enjoy its benefits. Again, this is for the obvious reason that return in education increases as the level of economic freedom rises. When people, thanks to lower tax rates, are allowed to retain most of the higher income that they gain from each incremental level of education, it makes very imminent sense to invest in education. On the other hand, when the government decides to tax the higher income of educated individuals at even higher rates, it makes very little sense to invest in educating oneself. मतलब जब tax lower रहता है, people feel very much interested in, they are able to retain much income, so they feel motivated to invest in education, as a result of which they become more and more educated, because education के field में बहुत ज़्यादा investment होता रहता है. Now when the government starts putting higher rates of tax on the higher income of the educated individuals, then the individuals feel lesser interested as their income gets lower and their economic freedom also decreases. They feel as a result less interested in investing in education. Simple. And the flowchart is also here. Lower income tax rates leads to higher income economic freedom, which leads to rise in investment in education. Now when tax rates are increasing, it is causing a fall in economic freedom, which is causing a fall in investment in education. So now this point is very irrelevant. We will not take this point into consideration. This is just an extra point. Such points, just skim it, ignore, and just focus on the main portion. Okay, these are just given to confuse or divert you from the main keywords. So, on the other hand, when the government decides to tax higher income of educated individuals at even higher rates, it makes very little sense to invest in educating oneself further. Now, with reference to the above passage, the following assumptions have been made. Now, let's see what assumptions match with what has been given in the passage. Now, we can assume that the basic thing is that the more economic freedom, the more investment can be done in education. Lesser economic freedom, lesser investment in education. Because, and this rise and fall in economic freedom is happening due to the rise and the increase and decrease in tax rates. Okay? It's a basic assumption. Now let's see whether our assumption is matching with any of the points, or which point is actually matching with our assumption. Let's find out. Okay? Lower tax rates in the country invariably translate into greater investments in higher education. Now, invariably is an extreme word. Okay? It is an extreme word. It is an extreme word. Invariably means always. Naturally, this is happening. So, lower tax rates in the country is not always translating into greater investments in the higher education, right? This is a very extreme word. Because lower tax rates can also cause something else. It is not invariably means always naturally flowing into the same thing, or naturally lower tax rates की वजह से greater investments are happening in higher education. Naturally it happens, always. Invariably is like an extreme word which means that always such things are happening. The lower tax rates की वजह से investments in higher education is always happening. No. नहीं भी हो सकता है. Tax rate जब बढ़ जा रहा है, investment तो नहीं हो रहा है ना. So this is not an always or all time situation taking place. So we will not take this point. Let's cancel it. Let's look at the next point. Investment in education of children ensures that economic freedom. Now this thing has not been mentioned here. They are saying investment in education of people. They have not mentioned a particular category of people as in children. So this is not going with the passage. Let's cancel it. Let's look at the last point. Economic freedom has a positive impact on building human capital. Yes. Now economic freedom has a positive impact on building human capital. Now how is human capital built? When we educate more and more citizens of the country, human capital is built. Now, how can that happen? If humans or citizens are provided with economic freedom. And how can economic freedom be provided? If lower tax rates are done. So, this point is actually going with the passage with our assumption that lower tax rates, if it's done, economic freedom increases, investment in education can be done, as a result, human capital can be built. So this kind of assumption of ours is actually matching with this assumption in the question. So this is a right point, that yes, economic freedom can create or leave behind a positive impact in building human capital, because lower tax rates lead to economic freedom, which leads to higher investing in education, which in turn builds human capital. So we have already assumed from the passage, right? And we had already made a flow chart that lower tax rates lead to a rise in economic freedom, which leads to higher or rise in investment in education, which in turn builds human capital. So our assumption of this is matching with the assumption given in the question. So our right answer is point number 3. So our right code is C, 3 only. Okay? So please just read the passage again. If you have any problem, think about it, comment in the comment section, and we will go through the passage solving your problem again. Let's move into the next passage. Take a minute, read the passage, and then we will solve it together. Okay, let's read the passage. Our urban bodies cannot possibly ensure sustainable delivery of water in cities unless financing mechanisms are put in place. मतलब without financing, urban bodies cannot supply water properly. Basic thing. Water delivery requires heavy investment in collecting it from natural source, treating it to make it potable, laying a distribution network of pipes for delivery. It also requires investment in sewerage infrastructure, sewage treatment plants, so that sewers can carry wastewater to these plants to ensure that untreated sewage is discharged back into natural water bodies. If our cities were rich enough to meet the entire cost, water would be free. They are not. Of course, if our city would have been very rich, then this problem would have been obviously solved and water would have been given out freely, free of cost, which is actually not, because वाटर क्या वाटर तो फ्री में बेचने का बात तो दूर की बात है, ये भी ठीक से नहीं हो पा रहा because we don't have that much of funds with us in our cities. Okay, so what is being said? That the urban bodies lack the amount of finance or funds which are required for the proper delivery or supply of water. And what does the supply of water require? What does it require? What does the process include? It requires collecting heavy investment in collecting natural source, making it portable, now laying distribution networks like pipes for delivery to users. Now investments have to be made in the sewerage infrastructure, and also in the sewage treatment plants. Then sewers have to carry the wastewater to the plants to ensure that untreated sewage is discharged back into the natural water bodies. So all of this is involved in the process of the supply and the complete proper supply and treatment of water, which is not done by the urban bodies because due to lack of funds in our cities. So this process has been said from end to end process has been said. Okay, from end to end. From source to, this is the source. From source to end actually. From source to end tak ka process has been explained in the passage, that what includes in the whole process of supply of water, what it includes. From collecting to treatment to delivery to the people, what it includes. Now this whole system requires a lot of funds and investment, which is not there at present in our cities, as a result of which our urban bodies are not being able to inculcate such proper system of or proper supply and distribution of water in our cities. This is the basic point कि funds नहीं है, financial mechanisms नहीं है, and due to the lack of this, our cities are not being able to, or our urban bodies are not being able to inculcate such a proper distribution and supply system of water. Now, this is a basic understanding that we're getting from the passage. Now, let's see if our understanding matches or which point of the question matches with our understanding. Okay. What is the most logical and crucial message conveyed by the passage? Urban local bodies must recover costs through user charges. Okay. Now, as it has been said that our cities are not rich, if it would have been rich, then this system would have been done and water would have been given to people free of cost without charging any money. Now, this thing is not happening in reality because we do not have that much sufficient funds. So some amount of money is charged, and as some amount of money is charged, these charges are required or these charges are used as indirect investment, which can be used for investing in such supply systems. So urban bodies must recover costs through user charges. So these charges which are taken while selling water or some other user charges can be done while selling water or while exchanging any kind of product or while delivering water or anything related to water. If anything related to water can be done, and in exchange of that any charge can be taken from the user or from the buyer, then that charge can be used by the urban local bodies to create and then that charge can be used by the urban local body in the creation of the funds which is required to develop such a smooth supply and distribution of water in the cities. Okay, so this point is actually correct and a very logical understanding as per my opinion. I hope everyone will agree with me. So let's take this point. Let's do the next point. Urban local bodies are not efficient enough to meet the water requirements of our cities. No. urban local bodies are not efficient enough to meet the water requirements of our cities. Urban local bodies are not efficient enough to meet the water requirements of our cities. This is not an overall all-time situation. Sufficient enough. Now this is also this is efficient enough. This is becoming an extreme situation. Extreme statement where they are saying that it is not efficient enough. मतलब hope छोड़ दिया है. There is no other hope left. Friends, there are no other hope left that the urban bodies can actually recover from the situation. There is no hope left. But this is not the situation. What they're saying that they don't have funds, that is why they're not being able to create a proper distribution channel, or they're not being able to meet the water requirements. If funds are provided, they'll be able to do it. So this is not a permanent problem. So this is what is indicating an extreme situation where this cannot be resolved ever. But that is not the correct thing projected in the passage. What is being projected in the passage is that it can be recovered if funds are available. So this point is a wrong point. We will not go with it. Let's cancel it. Let's look at the third point. Water shortage in our cities is a perennial problem that cannot be solved. Again, an extreme point. Perennial means always. Now, water shortage in our cities is a perennial problem that cannot be solved. Water shortage in our cities is a perennial. Perennial means always. Like a permanent thing. Another example of extreme word. This means that water shortage is a problem that will remain forever in our city, a problem that will remain permanently in our city, and it can never be solved. This is not the right thing. This is not the right point to be explained. This is not the right point. This is not something which is going with the passage or with the current scenario. What is being said that agar funds hoga, agar financial mechanisms available hai, then urban bodies will be able to recover the shortage. नहीं है इसलिए नहीं रिकवर कर पा रहे. But this is not a thing that water shortage is not will never be able to be covered up. Water shortage जो चल रहा है cities में, that will never be able to be covered up. That is not being said in the passage. This is not a permanent problem. It is a problem which has a temporary scenario which can be solved with a solution. So this is an extreme word which is showing a permanent issue, which is not true. Funds hoga, तो people, urban bodies will be able to recover this problem. So this point is also a wrong one. Let's cancel it. Let's go to point number D. In view of the water crisis in a city, there is an urgent need to limit the population of cities by adopting an upper limit of population size. ये तो कुछ extreme sentence हो गया. ये भी कुछ extreme हो गया. Now population के बारे में तो कुछ नहीं बोल रहे. They are saying funds कम हैं, इसलिए urban bodies are not being able to provide a proper distribution of water or provide or fulfill the water requirements in the city. They are not saying anything about the increase in population or what the increase in population is causing. Nothing of population or nothing regarding the population is being said here. So we cannot make such assumptions or we cannot make such comments regarding that population has to be reduced to solve this problem. This point is going completely against what the author is saying in the passage. So we cannot go with this point ever. Let's cancel it. So our right answer is point number A. So for this passage, our right answer is point number A. Okay? So this passage actually has another question. So for the first question of this passage, our right answer is point number A. Just one second. Yes. Okay, now let's go to the next question of the same passage. With reference to the above passage, the following assumptions have been made. Rich cities only can ensure sustainable delivery of water. See, again an extreme word, only. यहाँ पर कहीं पर भी in the passage it is not said that only rich cities can ensure proper delivery of water. No. If the city, any city, whether it's a rich city or a poor city, if the cities have sufficient funds, they will be able to ensure proper supply or delivery of water. So that point cannot be taken, especially because it has an extreme point and especially because it is wrong. They have not said that only rich cities can do it, okay? So this point is completely wrong. Any city with has funds can do it. This point is completely wrong. So we are left with this point, which is saying that sustainable delivery of water in cities means much more than supplying water to households. Of course, so if sustainable delivery of water takes place in the cities, more water will be supplied to the households. This is a very simple point. जितना पानी आएगा cities में उतना पानी जितना if sustainable flow of water will take place in the city, तो अच्छी तरह से और sorry. In the second point, it is being said that if sustainable flow of water is taking place in the city, then of course more and more smooth flowing of water will be reaching the households, right? So this is the right point. That sustainable delivery of water means more than supplying water to households. जो भी जितना तक जा रहा है, मतलब the minimum requirement which is reaching the households, minimum amount of water which is reaching the households, उससे ज़्यादा पहुँचेगा. So what does this mean? Sustainable delivery of water. This is a very simple point. The first point is saying that rich cities only can ensure proper delivery of water. No, that is the wrong point. In the passage, it is not being said. Firstly, only is an extreme word. Will not use sentences or options which has extreme words. Secondly, we will not choose that point because nowhere in the passage it is being said that only cities which have which are rich can do so. Any city which has funds can ensure proper distribution or delivery of water. That is the right thing, which is not going with this point. So any point which is negating the idea of the passage will not take it. The next point is saying that yes, sustainable delivery of water in cities means more and more supply of water to the households. So if sustainable delivery of water in the cities takes place, it means that more amount of water than the usual amount will be supplied to the households, which is the right point, which is the right thing to say. So we will, or which is the right assumption to be made. So we will take it. So our right assumption is 2. So our right assumption code is B. Let's go to the next passage. Take a minute, read the passage, and then we will go forward with solving it. Okay, let's read it. Now this passage has some figures, years, these years. You know, just skim these portions, okay? So read and choose the portions that are important for you to remember. Let's read it. In India, agriculture still engages about half of the workforce. Of its, about 85% of its farms are small and marginal, compared to China and Vietnam, which have experienced fast structural and rural transformation. India's story of slow transformation. So our main key thing is India's story of slow transformation, which is compared to China and Vietnam, which has a very fast and structural transformation. But we are having a slow transformation. This is not that it is stagnant. We are transforming. Now, as a result, poverty reduction in India was at much slower pace during 1988 to 2014. Now, poverty was being reduced at a very slower rate because slower transformation was happening. But slower transformation was happening. During which period? During this period. Compared to China and Vietnam. Now, all this comparison with India is happening to two countries, China and Vietnam. So, slow transformation in India was taking place compared to China and Vietnam. Poverty reduction was also taking place slowly compared to China and Vietnam between the year 1988 to 2014. Suddenly, a drastic change took place between the years 2005 to 2012. What happened during those years? Almost 3 times fast, dramatically almost 3 times fast than during the earlier period. What India did during that time? Research reveals that relative price scenarios changed by more than 50% in favor of agriculture in the wake of rising of global prices. Now, this boosted private investment in agriculture by more than 50%. As a result, agri GDP growth touched this between this year. Now, this is very factual. These data are not required. The net surplus of agri trade touched this amount, which means growth happened. Real farm wages also rose. All this led to unprecedented fall in poverty. Which means that poverty reduced a lot. Okay? So what is the basic thing being said? That India was slowly progressing compared to China and Vietnam. Due to its slow transformation, its poverty was also reducing slowly. Suddenly, between the years 2005 to 2012, its poverty reduction accelerated 3 times than usual. Why? What happened during that time? So, their price scenarios changed by more than 50% in favor of agriculture, which led to rising of the global prices. This led to rising of the private investments in agriculture more than 50%. As a result of this, growth of agri GDP took place, or agri trade took place, which touched around $25 billion. Okay, this is a basic understanding, which led to the reduction of poverty at a great rate. So an improvement, overall improvement in India took place during the years of 2005 to 2012. Now we have to see which of the points here are going with our understanding or our assumption. With reference to the above passage, the following assumptions have been made. Structural and rural transformation is impossible when farmers are mainly small and marginal. Now, structural and rural transformation is impossible when farms are mainly small and marginal. Such a point is not mentioned anywhere in the passage. They are saying, firstly, it is an extreme point. That impossible. No. Slowly transformation हो रहा था ना India में. Then the transformation accelerated. So it is not impossible. Even though Indian farms were small and marginal, slow transformation still हो रहा था, right? We need to be positive. But here it's saying that it's impossible. It was impossible because it has small and marginal farms. So this is an extreme word, firstly, and secondly, this point is not going with the passage because India में slow progress transformation हो रहा था. It was not a completely impossible scenario. So this point is not going with the passage. Let's cancel it. Because this is an extreme word, and secondly, because slow transformation हो रहा था, changes were coming around, and then things accelerated. So it is not that the things were impossible due to small and marginal farms. So this point is wrong. Let's go to the fourth point. Higher global prices of agriculture commodities essential for India's poverty reduction. Now, higher global price of agricultural commodities, this point is not mentioned anywhere in the passage. Nowhere in the passage the author has at all mentioned about agricultural products or rising in the prices of the agricultural products. So something which is not mentioned in the passage will not go for it. Let's cancel it. Point number 2. A good price incentive can trigger investment in agriculture. Yes, we have seen that prices did increase, relative price scenarios change by more than 50%, which in favor of agriculture, leading to rise in global prices, which also boosted private investment. So good price incentive actually triggered investment in agriculture. So this point is actually going with it. We will tick it. Right point. This is the right assumption. We have seen, right, during those years, the relative change in the price scenario by 50% in favor of agriculture actually boosted investment. So what does that mean? So from this, we can assume that a growth price incentive, means rise, can trigger investment in agriculture. So this point is going with it. We'll take it. Let's go to the third point. India needs to build value chains for high value agri products like livestock and horticulture. Yes. Now India We have already seen that our global prices are rising. The rise of global prices took place due to the change in price scenarios. Private investments were boosted in agriculture more than 50%. So livestock, horticulture, agriculture, all these ancillary items, they all come under the ancillary category. All these things, if investments in this is done, then India needs to build value chains for high value agri products like livestock and horticulture. So for reducing its poverty, India's poverty reduced due to what? As its price scenario changed in agriculture, which led to global price rising, which boosted private investment in agriculture, and which also led to the growth of agri GDP and agri trade around $25 billion, right? So if India builds value chains with agri products like livestock and horticulture, it will lead to growth of the agri GDP, which will actually reduce the poverty. So this is a very correct assumption. So we will take it. So our right answer is quote C, 2 and 3. Okay, look at the passage again, and then we will know if you have any problem, comment in the comment section and we will solve it. Okay, now let's move on to the next passage. Okay, so we have another question. Actually, I had repeated the same portion here, so I ticked it again. Not a problem. We have another question belonging to the same passage. Okay, let's read the question. Which one best reflects the critical message of the passage? A. India should create large-scale employment of farm-rural employment to reduce poverty in the near future. Now, if about India creating more employment, such a point is not mentioned in the passage. They're talking about rise in prices, which caused a boost in investment in agriculture or agri products, which reduce poverty. Nothing of such sort that creating large-scale employment will reduce poverty has been mentioned in the passage. So this point is not going with our passage. We'll cross it. Let's go to the next point. India should create a large number of farmer-producer companies. This is also not going with the passage. Such suggestions are not made in the passage, and it is also not even logical. How can India create some larger farmer-producer companies? This is not logical. Prices need to be increased, investments need to be done so that poverty can be reduced. This is not logical, this is not going with the passage. So let's cancel it. Third, private investment in agriculture should be given priority over public investment. This point is also not going with the passage because such points as in private and public comparison, private-public investment comparison has not been mentioned in the passage. So all these points which are not mentioned in the passage, we are not going for it. Points which are mentioned in the passage or which are somewhere hidden or implied in the passage or can be understood after reading the passage, we'll go for such points. This is not going with the passage, so we'll cross it. The last one, inclusive agricultural growth is the key to reducing poverty in near future. Of course, this is what has happened, right? Investment change in the price scenarios led to rise in the global prices, boosted private investment in agriculture or agri products, which reduce poverty. So agricultural growth actually is the key. From that, we have understood that agricultural growth actually is the key to reducing poverty in India. So this point is correct. So right answer is D. Now let's go to our last passage. Take a minute, read the passage, and then we'll solve it. Okay. Let's read the passage. Spanish ships in the 16th century first brought potato tuber from South America to Europe. So Spanish ships brought potato from South America to Europe, which became a reliable backup to cereal crops, particularly in the cold, rain-soaked soils of Ireland. The Irish were soon almost wholly dependent on the potato as their staple food. Now, potatoes, they started loving the food they started loving the vegetables so much that it became a staple food for them. And they were planting primarily one prodigious variety, the lumper potato, whose genetic frailty would be cruelly exposed by the fungus. Now, they were trying to plant a particular category of potato, जिसका एक फंगस, जिसका एक ही फॉल्ट है कि उसका एक फंगस है, this fungus, the Phytophthora infestans, there are chances that this category of potato can be infected by this kind of fungus. Now that only happened that in 1845, spores of the deadly fungus began spreading across the country, destroying all the lumpers in this part, resulting in famine which killed or displaced millions. What is the basic thing being said in the passage? Spanish ships ne laya potato from South America to Europe. Now, after they were brought there from South America to Europe, it had become a staple food in Ireland. They started loving the vegetables so much that they started planting another category of potato and they started considering it as the only food item. मतलब एक ही सब्जी वो लोग बास्केट में रखा कुछ और भी रखता तो बच जाते ना एक ही सब्जी they kept that one only vegetable, that potato, in their basket as their only food item, and they started growing another category of potato, lumper potato, जिसका एक ही फॉल्ट था कि उसका टेंडेंसी था एक पर्टिकुलर फंगस के वजह से इन्फेक्टेड होना, which actually हो गया in 1845, as a result of which a full range of lumper potatoes got destroyed. And as all their food got destroyed, and as they were only dependent on one category of food items, and as that full category of food was destroyed due to that fungus, they could not have any food, and as they were not left with any food, I would not say all of them, but maximum of the population was destroyed. Around millions of them actually were destroyed or killed because of the lack of proper availability of food. So the most logical and practical thing to assume I would say that the most practical, logical thing to assume or to suggest would be not to depend on one kind of food item, because अगर वो खराब हो जाता है तो कुछ नहीं बचता है खाने के लिए, right? Because they were depending on one food item, one cereal, one staple food, that is potato. Spanish ships brought potato from South America to Europe. Now, for the Ireland people, that became one staple crop. And they started to grow another category of it, which had a tendency to be infected by a fungus. Now, when it actually got infected, the whole range of those crops got destroyed. And as they were only dependent on that kind of food, they had nothing to eat anymore. And they all got killed or destroyed because of famine or lack of food. So the most logical, practical thing would be to keep other food items as backup, not to depend on one food crop. Okay? Now let's see if our assumption or which point in the question matches with our assumption. Okay? First point, for introducing any foreign plant into a country, the soil and climate conditions of that country should be suitable. Nothing of that sort is mentioned in the passage, so we will not go further with this point. Let's cancel it. Sorry. Second point, as a staple food of a country, tuber crops like potato cannot replace cereal crops. Now, cannot replace cereal crops, this is an extreme word. Not extreme, kind of, not totally extreme, but kind of an extreme word, because we cannot justify by saying that tuber crops like potato cannot replace cereal crops. We cannot say such things. It can be replaced, but it would be suggested that other things should be also kept along with it. Okay? So we cannot say that it cannot replace, but other things can be kept with it. So this point is not going with it. It is also showing kind of an extremity that cannot be kept. It can be kept, it can be replaced, or it can replace serial cross, but along with it, something other than that also should be kept for your own safety. Let's cancel this point. Let's go with the third point. Some crops of the fungal infections of plants cannot be prevented or stopped from spreading across large areas. Now, such a point is not mentioned anywhere in the passage. That some crops of the fungal infection of plants cannot be prevented or stopped from spreading across large areas. Anything of this statement or anything like this statement is not mentioned anywhere in the passage, so we will not go with this point. Okay? Anything, we remember the rules, right? Anything that does not go with the passage, will not take that point. Let's cancel it. Let's go with the last point. Relying on a homogeneous food source is not desirable. So we were asked to find out the critical message. And we were already discussing the critical message would be, or the practical suggestion would be, to not to depend on one particular crop, but to keep another one or some others as a backup or as a food safety, so that you do not die out of starvation. So our point is actually matching with this, that relying on a homogeneous food source is not desirable. Okay, so our right answer for our last passage is point number D. So I hope our practice session was helpful for you in all ways possible, and if you have any problems, please contact us on our website, on our Telegram channel, on our Instagram channel, and also on our YouTube channel. Comment on our videos, and please like and subscribe our channel, iShastra, as iShastra will always be there to guide you in all your papers for prelims, mains, and also will be there to guide you for your interview sessions as well. We're there to help you and guide you. I hope this practice session was helpful for you. I will come back with a part 3 session of the same paper. Till then, goodbye, good luck, have a great day, and prepare well for your prelims. Goodbye.